everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily Show YouTube channel. The best way to support the show on this YouTube channel is to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and or share it with a friend. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode, and whichever way you choose to support the show, I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. I hope that today's message and episode brings some bit of positive change to your life. Hello everyone, welcome to the Evolve with Emily Show. I am your host, Emily Hayden, and today we are talking all about gut health. We have my good friend on today, Rachel Scheer. She is certified in functional medicine. She has her bachelor's of science in nutrition science and dietetics. She's the CEO of Rachel Scheer Nutrition, the host of the Scheer Madness Podcast, and she helps people to optimize their gut health and body comp through functional medicine. So everybody, welcome Rachel to the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Emily. I'm so excited to be here on your show today. We've been friends for a good while through competing, and it's amazing to see how both of us have evolved into everything we're doing today.
Yeah, it really is cool. We were talking the other day, just so the listeners know, how we actually had competed at quite a few of the same shows. We were always in nationals backstage together. And so it's just cool because now we're both involved with a lot of the same brands, you know, First Form, Icon Meals, Transcend. And it's really cool to see, like you said, just the growth and where we've gone. You know, I think sometimes when competitors first start competing, it's like competing is life, and that's like, you know, all that they're doing. And so I love these long-term relationships that I've been able to build because, you know, whether it's you seeing you build your brand and your business and your podcast, or it's like our friend Jason, who we were also with this last weekend at the First Form Fall Fest, him starting his family and, you know, now being a girl dad, he has his twins. Like, it's just cool to see people move on and like go on to the next stages and seasons of life.
Yeah. I loved competing, and it was actually one of the big reasons I got into functional medicine because of all of my health issues throughout that period of my life. But you're completely correct. I mean, when you're in it, you are like so in it. And I was so disassociated with, I feel like, the rest of the world. But I mean, it was like you're so passionate about it and you love it. And what I find today is like there's a big gap between the fitness industry and competing and what health looks like in that aspect. And then also what it looks like when it comes to like holistic health and functional medicine. So a lot of what I actually do is kind of bridging the gap between those two areas because I come from the bodybuilding world, the competing side, the extreme side where you care more just about the way you look, the aesthetics, having six-pack abs. That was known as Rachel Scheer, six-pack abs. My critique always when I was competing was, you were too hard, soften up your abs. And I was like, gosh, I mean,
you're like, I literally can't.
What a terrible critique. And I'm like, okay, I'll go eat a bunch more and stuff. And my diet at the time was just, you know, I was lean, right? But I was macro focused, but it wasn't food quality. There was a ton of still processed food, a ton of artificial foods, Walden Farms, like the worst thing in the world for you. And it like combined between the emotional stress, the physical stress that you're under, then you add in some of those different dietary things, you know, I ended up with, you know, such massive gut issues. To the point where I actually had a physician want to remove my entire large intestine.
No way.
I went to a bunch of different doctors because I had hormone issues, thyroid issues, had to get on thyroid medication. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I'm the epitome of health, right? You know, I'm so healthy. I'm a nutritionist. I went to school for dietetics. But they don't teach you about gut health. They don't teach you about hormones, thyroid. They don't teach you about the role that stress and trauma plays on the body. And after going to a bunch of different Western medicine doctors, put on birth control, put on, you know, antidepressants, laxatives, just all these different Band-Aids to my health issues. That's when I really got interested in functional medicine. And that's really what my practice now does today. And I just kind of combined that, like we can care about the way we look. There's nothing wrong with that. Hey, you want to have a six-pack, you want to grow your booty. I do a ton of booty workouts all the time. But if you know, we can also prioritize the health and all of the internal side as well too. And I think we need both. We really do need both of those different things, the holistic, the mindset. And yeah, we want to all look good naked too.
Yeah, I love it. I love how you combine all of those things, because I know that there's a lot of people that have experienced the, typical Western medicine practices that really just focuses on one aspect of the person. So I really love that you have a holistic approach, because I really believe that that's when your body really gets in full alignment, right? Because if you're just focusing on, just your diet, but you're not focusing on your mental health or on, your activity and all these other things that go into it as well, then you're only going to get that one result. And sometimes that one result you won't get because everything else is coming into play, right? Like unresolved trauma. People are like, why can't I stick to a diet? And yet they have these unresolved issues that they've never addressed. And that's really the reason why they are going overboard, or in some cases binging, when in reality, if they would address these things, that it would actually allow them to have better diet adherence. So I want to know from you, what are some key things that would let people know that they're having gut health issues? So what are those common symptoms that kind of give you a flag to say, hey, you might want to look into your gut health?
Yeah, great question. First is pretty straightforward, right? Where you can have GI related issues, constipation, diarrhea. A lot of the clients that I see that I work with, they have chronic bloating and distension on a daily basis. Now, this isn't just, okay, I ate a big meal, I'm a little bit bloated. We've all had that and experienced that before. You go out, maybe you have like a cheat meal or something that's not that great for you. You feel a little bit bloated. But a lot of the clients I see where their gut health or their microbiome is off, they have chronic distension. They start off maybe with a flat belly at the beginning of the day. At the end of the day, they look like they're 6 months pregnant. Sometimes there's pain associated with it. There's cramping. I had a ton of pain with a lot of my gut issues. So I'd say first sign is actual GI issues, constipation, diarrhea. Some people it goes back and forth, bloating, distension. But you can actually have gut issues without actually having gut issues. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. And this is when it can come down to neurological issues, so anxiety, depression, and brain fog. Actually, one of the number one symptoms of a leaky gut, which is basically when our gut lining becomes weakened and semi-permeable, because you can think of it, we have these junctions that line the gut, and our gut's one cell layer thick. So, if our diet is inflammatory, if we're under a lot of stress, that is very easily broken down. And when we have a leaky gut, they've shown that it cause a lot of neuro issues. Brain fog is the most common that we see because our gut and our brain are so highly interconnected. So we see the mood issues. I see low immune response in a lot of people. So getting sick. They've actually just put out a couple articles last week about how we can actually use bacteria in the gut to prevent things like COVID and other viruses as well too. But 70% of our immune system is in the gut. So on the extreme side, I've seen people develop things like autoimmune conditions even when their gut is really off, because it's very immune based there. Sometimes people will develop food sensitivities, food allergies. This can be manifested in the skin. Sometimes we'll get rashes, rosacea, eczema. A lot of that can be gut related as well too. So there's a ton of symptoms for sure that can develop based off of the gut. And because every system is interconnected with the gut, between our hormones, between our thyroid, between our brain, all of these other systems can get off too. So when the gut is off, I see women with hormonal imbalances, things like estrogen dominance. I see hypothyroidism. Then you add in the neuro issues and then the actual gut issues. So a lot of what I do with my practice is we start with the gut. And if the gut is off, it's likely that a lot of other systems will be off too. But yeah, there's a lot of symptoms for sure that can come from the gut. But I'd say the biggest thing is you can have gut issues without having gut issues. I'd say the first, sign is actual symptoms related to the gut. But I've seen people who've had, like acne or rosacea and things like that have zero GI issues at all. But I run a test on them and they have a lot of dysbiosis, bacteria overgrowth in the gut. And it's all, stemming from their gut.
Yeah. So what is that test that you run? And is that kind of your first step with your clients, getting this testing so you can see what's going on?
Yes. I do a stool test on all of my clients with my practice. And there's a lot of different stool tests out online. You may have heard of like the Viome test, but they're great and they're kind of like nice to know information. They may look at some different probiotics, but we also want to look at some other more clinical diagnostic things. So I like to look at if there's gut pathogens. So this could be like parasites, E. coli, yeast overgrowth in the gut. I like to look at their enzyme production. So there's a marker called pancreatic elastase to see if they're producing enough digestive enzymes, stomach acid, because if that's low, that's actually a root cause of sometimes bacteria overgrowth in the gut, because we have to kill bacteria as it enters into our stomach with that stomach acid, digest protein with that. We'll look at some other great markers, ratios of bacteria, so good, bad bacteria, those probiotics. And what's so cool is with some of these tests, I can literally look at the ratios of bacteria and tell you if somebody's overweight or not by their bacteria in their gut. There's this ratio, it's called firmicutes to bacteroidetes. And they've shown if that ratio is greater than 0.9, it actually makes you more insulin resistant. So the different types of bacteria we have in our gut help with insulin sensitivity. They play a role in how many calories we absorb from the food that we're eating. And then we look at things like leaky gut, if that's present there through a marker called zonulin. And then we'll even look at just overall GI inflammation. So it gives us, like, it's my baby. It gives us so much information of what's happening in the gut. And then typically I'll test people, in their other systems. I'll look at their hormones, their thyroid. But regardless, if there's anything off in those areas, if there's something off in the gut, I always will start there.
Gotcha. That's incredible to hear you talk about it, because you can tell how passionate you are about it and just all the different markers. Like, you are exactly who I would want helping me with my gut. So you mentioned leaky gut a few times. What are some things that can cause leaky gut? Do we know what causes it?
So there's kind of 3 different buckets that can cause the gut to become leaky. And they're all different forms of stress. There's an emotional stress. So trauma, just like you have a really stressful life, maybe that's work stress, relationship stress. And the way this plays a role in the gut lining is when your cortisol, that stress hormone, is really high. We know cortisol is catabolic, so it breaks things down. And in short-term bouts of cortisol is beneficial. So it actually can be great. So like, for example, bodybuilding, we have short bursts of cortisol when we're training, and that's beneficial. But when it's chronically elevated, unaddressed trauma, chronic work stress, relationship stress, that starts to break things down. We know it breaks down things like muscle tissue, but hey, our gut lining, it's also a muscle tissue. It's very thin, it's one cell layer thick. So that cortisol starts to break down that gut lining. So stress can be a big part of it. Dietary stress, of course, can be a big part of it too. So foods that are more inflammatory, industrial seed oils, vegetable oils, these are very high in omega-6s. So they cause inflammation in the gastrointestinal tract. So I'd say that's one of the biggest culprits, along with sugar, of course. Sugar, simple carbohydrates, bacteria love carbohydrates, and especially sugar. So sugar is like the favorite food source for yeast, candida overgrowth. But it's inflammatory to the body. So that can also break down the gut lining. So that would be the second one, dietary stress. But then the third bucket would actually be more so environmental. So these could be things like pathogens that you pick up. Maybe you go travel, you get a parasite, viruses. Maybe sometimes you eat some food that's not so good. Hey, every time you eat food, you're literally taking in things from the outside world and putting it into your body. So, that's why most of our immune system is in our gut, because it better be at the forefront, ready to attack whatever we're literally putting into our body. So it can also be, other type of toxins. I've seen people who've had mold toxicity, heavy metal toxins, just the different types of products that we're using. So environmental factors. So it'd be those 3 buckets. Emotional stress, trauma, dietary, and then environmental.
What are some things that you do for your clients who you recognize have that stress in their life? Maybe it's that emotional or like work-related stress. Since you do kind of a holistic approach, what are some methods or some things that you give them to kind of reduce that?
Yeah, so part of the initial process with all of my clients, is the tests, don't guess, really get a good idea of what's off in their body. But with functional medicine, we're always asking the question, why? Why do we have this problem in the first place? And what can we do to restore function? I'll give you an example. I've worked with a client recently. She was actually on my podcast, Angela Beasley, and she had Crohn's and SIBO and leaky gut. So she probably had more severe stuff when it came to her gut issues. So she had an actual autoimmune condition. It was very immune related, of course, because of her Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. She had bacterial overgrowth and leaky gut, and it took her about a year to heal. And we did a lot of the testing, identifying the things that were off. We had to eradicate the bacteria. So we do some different protocols. There's always 2 phases to healing the gut. I call it the weeding and the reseeding. So the first part, we're eradicating if there's bacteria that's overgrown, bad bacteria. We may be pulling out toxins. So kind of getting rid of everything that shouldn't be there, foods that are inflammatory. And then phase 2 really goes into trying to re-inoculate the gut with good bacteria, slowly add in some more foods back in. But we did that for like a good 6 months, and she made some progress, but she wasn't really completely where we wanted her to be. And it really wasn't until we addressed the emotional part and the aspect that she was like a type A, do more, go, always burnout type girl, like training twice a day. And until I really got her to do some of the work, that's when everything really started to click and started to fall into place. So to answer your question, when I'm working with those clients, I'm really getting to understand what are the different buckets that they may be in. And sometimes I'm asking questions about their lifestyle, about their work stress, relationship stress, their daily food routine. And I can really start to gauge with these people where some of these stressors may be coming from. I will say a lot of people kind of come in with the thought of, hey, I'll just get on some different probiotics. I'll do the little protocol that she has me do and I'll be good to go. But I'll say most people realize like, oh, shoot, I'm really going to actually have to make some of these lifestyle changes. So for my client like Angela, I had her do some eliminating some things off of her plate, allocating some different things that maybe she didn't need on her plate anymore, and then automating some things. So she was like the do-all, be-all for her whole family, grocery shopping, cooking, laundry, working a full-time job, and working out twice a day. And I'm like, this is going to be really hard, to heal your gut with all of this. And she was someone who was like super compliant, strict, was willing to do it, but it was actually kind of the opposite for her. So she was able to like automate some of the grocery things and just kind of give herself more grace. Like, okay, if I go to bed and the dishes aren't done, is this going to be the end of the day? Like end of the world? Like, no, it's not. So we were able to get some things off of her plate, but then along with that, I had her start doing some journaling and really focusing on like her morning routine, because for someone like Angela, she was in massive burnout and she really didn't have any time for herself to process, to really understand her emotions. It just was all bottled up and she was just this little ball of stress. So I got her to do some morning journaling of really writing out, the things that, she was going through. And I think when you can put it on paper very often, we can look at it a little bit more analytical. She also just was taking time to herself. She would tell me about how she would have time in the morning, just like putting on some meditation music, relaxing. And it's amazing by just, I think, little tweaks like that. So eliminating some things off your plate, doing some journaling, doing the work, having that time for yourself. She did a lot of other different things as well too. We worked a lot on sleep. I made her get a brand new mattress, and silly things like that. She was like, I never thought Rachel was like one of her tasks was going to be, hey, you need to get a new mattress. You need to get better sleep. But it was a lot of those different things, and it's not easy work. I will tell anybody who's listening, the emotional part, the trauma part. I'm someone who comes from that, and it's scary to have to dive into a lot of those different things. I'm by no means like a counselor. So sometimes I have my clients go work with a counselor, a therapist. If there's a lot of childhood trauma, maybe playing a role in some of the ways that we're acting. Maybe it's like the relationship with food. As you said at the beginning, most things we have, whether it's food addictions, eating disorders, like these all come from some type of trauma. And trauma manifests in the body in different ways. And it's no coincidence that most people who end up with a counselor or a therapist suffer from IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, or gut issues, or an autoimmune condition, because the body holds on to these stressors and these traumas.
That is just wild to think about. Our bodies are so smart. And I feel like, you know, just listening to your protocol with your clients, it is really clear how you play such a huge role in them just kind of getting their entire life back on track, right? They think they're coming to you for like you said, a probiotic or something. And yet here they are like getting better sleep and practicing gratitude and journaling and taking time for themselves and automating grocery shopping, all these little things. But together, they're not so little. Together, they make such a huge difference. And, you know, ultimately by doing this, you're increasing the quality of people's lives. So I think it's incredible what you do. And I think it's special because I think the reason people have the idea in their head that when they come to you, they're just going to get a probiotic is because that's what people usually experience. Usually when you go to just a nutritionist, you're getting just the diet plan, right? Or you're going, you know, just to this person. It's all separated. So I really love the fact that you focused on functional medicine and a holistic approach, because it gives people exactly what they need to make those long-term sustainable results. So you had mentioned before that food sensitivities are a symptom, not a root cause. I think a lot of times when people start to recognize that they're having like gluten issues or whatever it is, they think that that's the issue. So can you kind of just explain a little bit further on what you meant by that?
Yes, a food sensitivity is very different than a food allergy. So a food allergy is an IgE immune response. So common food allergies are like peanuts or dairy, and yes, gluten and wheat for a lot of people. But a food sensitivity is very different. And typically we develop food sensitivities based off of our gut microbiome. So we typically aren't born with these food sensitivities. We can develop them over time. But what's great about it is we can also heal these food sensitivities by healing our gut. So typically we develop sensitivities for two main reasons: digestive enzyme insufficiency, so low stomach acid, or low pancreatic enzyme, so we're not breaking down and absorbing the food, or we have a leaky gut. And when our gut is leaky and permeable, we actually get food and bacteria and toxins that seep through that gut lining. And when it seeps through that gut lining and into the bloodstream, it triggers an immune and an inflammatory response. So these are going to be IgA and IgG type immune reactions. So they're very different than a food allergy, but they are an immune reaction nonetheless. So for some people, when they do a food sensitivity test and if their gut is really off, they come back with this like laundry list of food sensitivities. And they're like, oh my God, I can't eat anything. What am I going to eat? Like, this is the worst thing in the world. And I'm like, okay, we need to heal your gut. So the solution is not to just pull out all of these foods and problem solved. We fixed it. It's, hey, we need to figure out the root cause. Are we dealing with a digestive enzyme issue? We need to look for that. Can you get on some HCl and maybe some pancreatic enzymes to see if that helps? Do we need to do a gut healing protocol, whether that's healing the leaky gut? Our gut lining has an incredible ability to heal. And when we pull out the things that are damaging it, we add in the things that can help heal it, like L-glutamine, aloe vera, licorice root, zinc. In as little as 3 weeks, that gut lining can build itself back up. So,
and just from those that you just mentioned?
Yeah, you have to remove the triggers, right? So like if somebody's still eating inflammatory foods or they're eating some things that are disrupting the gut, or let's say they have something they're unaware of, like a gut pathogen or a heavy metal, which we hold those in the gut, that could still be causing the gut to become inflamed and leaky over time. But yes, if they can remove the things that are causing it and add in things to help build it back up, in as little as 3 weeks, we can actually regenerate and rebuild that gut lining back up.
That's incredible. That has to be so fun for you to get to experience this with your clients.
I love it. I nerd out so much. And then I will say there's a third type of a food sensitivity, which is not an immune response at all, but people will notice a sensitivity. And that's going to be bacteria fermenting on different types of foods. So people who have dysbiosis or bacteria overgrowth in the gut, oftentimes when they eat different types of fibers or carbohydrates, the bacteria love these types of foods. So if you can think of like how bread is made, and we have yeast and we give it sugar, and that yeast eats the sugar, and what happens to the bread? It produces that gas and the bread rises. Well, when we have a lot of bacteria, SIBO, which is small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, or dysbiosis, you may get a lot of that happening because of the bacteria. So these people will eat these different types of fibers and sometimes good foods like broccoli, like asparagus, onion, garlic, and they're like, I'm sensitive to these foods. I'm blowing up like a balloon. Well, it's not a sensitivity maybe going on like an IgG or IgA response, but it's their bacteria fermenting, producing a bunch of gases. And depending on the type of bacteria too, some of them can produce toxins that can be inflammatory. So they're like, oh my gosh, I'm sensitive to this food, which you are, but you only are because of the bacteria. So if we can fix the bacteria issue, the sensitivity to that food will also go away.
Okay. And so, okay, what are some mistakes that you see people making when they're trying to heal their gut?
First one would be overdoing a bunch of the probiotics and fermented foods. So I'm all for probiotics, but if you're somebody who's dealing with a bacteria issue, sometimes adding more bacteria is like adding more fuel to the fire. So we just have to be very careful with it. So I'd say if you're someone who has gut issues, like severe issues, be a little bit careful with the probiotics. That was one mistake I made when I was trying to heal my gut. I was like, probiotics, yogurts, kombucha, not to mention a lot of kombucha is like sugar. And you really don't know what you're getting too with some of those different types of bacteria strains. Some could help, some could not be so great. So I say just kind of take it easy, start really slow. If you're gonna do a probiotic, kind of see how your body responds to that first and foremost. I'd say the next thing is going to be mindless snacking. So our gut has something, it's called our migrating motor complex. And these are cleaning waves that clean our gut. So every time you go to sleep at night, we get the most amount of this MMC, migrating motor complex action. And that's that rumbling you like feel between meals when you're like, oh, I'm hungry. And that's actually these cleaning waves that are sweeping bacteria, toxins, and debris to the lower part of the gastrointestinal tract. But every time you eat, you actually disrupt that migrating motor complex. So for people who are trying to heal the gut, snacking is not going to be the best bet. We want to eat, we need nutrition, of course, in order to heal. But I say, hey, we need to make sure we're getting all of our nutrition in each meal and try to eliminate snacking as much as possible. I also think most snacks aren't always the healthiest choices. People are doing like processed food options. They're usually not doing like fruit or nuts and seeds and things like that. They're processed food options. So I say eat meals, limit snacking as much as possible, of course. I'd say some people just trying to focus on symptoms would be another part of it too. So just reducing symptoms. And I see this a lot with people just, pulling more and more foods out, right? So I can't eat this, I'll pull this out. I can't eat this, I'll pull this out. And then I have these clients who get down to like 5 foods they can eat. Well, what's kind of unfortunate is the people who have the most compromised gut also need the most nutrition. And then they keep pulling that out and out and out. And then they get down to the bare minimums, and we still haven't really fixed anything. We just have pulled things out and out and more. So
what happens to your gut internally when you're only feeding it like the same 5 foods all the time? Is that a good or is that a bad thing?
So it's not great for gut diversity. So the more diverse our diet is with different types of fibers and fruits, veggies, good quality protein, healthy fats, the more diverse our gut microbiome is, right? So oftentimes it's the fibers that people with gut issues don't tolerate the most. So they pull out a lot of fruits and vegetables. They get down to the basics, like white rice. A lot of them will maybe tolerate, but there's nothing really in that does good for your microbiome, maybe some proteins in there. So they end up in the process just further lowering their gut diversity.
How important is sleep to gut health? And could gut health, if you have a really bad gut, could that actually affect your sleep?
Oh, yes, 100%. Well, a couple of things. When our gut is leaky, we have higher levels of cortisol typically. It's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. That's the cortisol affecting the gut, or is the gut causing the high cortisol? But we know we see both go hand in hand, high cortisol and leaky gut. And cortisol plays a huge role in your circadian rhythm. So in the morning when we wake up, we get that spike of cortisol, and then before bed, cortisol is at its lowest, and then that's when melatonin picks up. So let's just say your gut is leaking off and you're getting these like cortisol spikes chronically throughout the night or even during the day. That actually wakes you up quite a bit. So people will notice a lot of disrupted sleep because of their gut being leaky. And then, yes, to answer your question, if we have poor sleep, we have poor recovery. We know in like the bodybuilding world, like sleep is essential to repair and heal. This is when we produce a lot of those hormones that are needed for healing. We produce a lot of growth hormone in the middle of the night. That's great for healing. Melatonin is very healing for the body as well too. And then that's when we get a lot of those cleaning waves, that migrating motor complex that is going to help sweep out and eliminate a lot of bacteria. So sleep is very, very, very essential. And I'd say, literally for everything, but especially for healing the gut.
And I love that one of your recommendations to a client was to get a new mattress, because I've done that with my friends before where, I would just tell them like, hey, you need a good quality mattress. You're an adult. It's time to invest in yourself. Get a good quality one, because sleep really is so important. And then they invested in like a really great mattress. They have the best sleep ever. And they're like, wow, it's such a difference. My life is so much better just from something as simple as a mattress. But it really does help, especially with, just your overall health. And if you at all are an athlete, you should not be letting yourself not get sleep. Like, you have to prioritize your sleep if you want to be recovering and, functioning at your best.
Have you ever heard of an Ooler before?
No.
Okay, so that was like the best buy I ever got. They should sponsor me if they're listening. But it's this cooling pad you put on your bed, and water flows through it. I got it, and it was like one of those like spontaneous purchases, but it was the best purchase ever, because our body, our core temperature has to drop to, I think it's like 67 degrees. Don't quote me on that, but it has to drop pretty low in order for us to get into that deep restorative sleep that our body needs. So I like to think of it as REM sleep, rapid eye movement. That's very healing for the brain, the neuro side of everything. But the deep sleep is really healing for the body. So we have to get into that deep sleep. I don't know if you've ever had a night of sleep where it's like hot and you're just constantly awake all night. So your room should be like dark, like a cave. I'm like if you were to see my stuff, I have the Ooler, I have like blackout curtains, I have an eye mask, I put on like the whole white noise. Like I'm very adamant on getting good sleep.
I love it. So it's funny. I've seen an ad for something like that on Instagram before, and I was like, well, I don't have that. And I wasn't going to buy it because I wasn't sure if it would be good or not. So I made my own, and I basically just put my sheets inside of my freezer. I literally did this. I put my sheets in my freezer, and then after like a few hours, I took them out and put them on to go to sleep. And it wasn't what you think. Like, you'd probably think that it was like hard and like super cold, but it was actually just like the most refreshing thing ever. So now like I put my sheets in my freezer sometimes before I go to sleep.
We're going to get you an Ooler.
She's like, you don't have to live like this anymore.
Her sheets in her freezer.
I love it though. It works. Okay. So improvising. So you are also with First Form. We've both been with First Form for a while now. I'm curious, what are your favorite gut related products that First Form carries that you really enjoy?
Yes, they have a really good gut supplement. I think it's called GI Revive. I think I'm going to.
Is it GI Advantage?
Yes. Sorry, GI Advantage. I was like, I know I'm going to get this wrong.
Yeah.
GI Advantage, but I know everything that's in it. It has a good amount of that L-glutamine I've talked about. It has some licorice root. It has some marshmallow, which is also a good type of a prebiotic, and it's good for healing the leaky gut. It has, I think I mentioned licorice root, but licorice root is incredible for the gut lining, aloe vera. So it's a great combo supplement for healing the gut lining and just supporting overall gut health. So sometimes I'll have my clients take about 2 of those each day just to support their gut microbiome. They also have some good digestive enzymes as well too. So if you're someone like, I have some food sensitivities, I'm not sure. You could try some digestive enzymes. Like I said, supplements can help, but it's not really the whole picture. But I think there are sometimes some different things you can try to see if you get any benefit while you're kind of working with all the other different changes, your diet, your lifestyle too simultaneously. So digestive enzymes with each meal. That's a great place to start doing the GI Advantage. You can take that just for overall gut support. The greens, I'm big on the greens. If you see my story, I'm always doing the greens. And I think they do have some probiotics in there, a bunch of different fruits and vegetables, prebiotics. And then the Opti Reds is a great source of polyphenols. And one thing I really do for a lot of my clients when we're trying to heal their gut or re-inoculate the gut with good bacteria is we focus on polyphenols. So that's what gives like fruits and vegetables its bright colors. So you see a lot of polyphenols in things like berries. Dark chocolate is a great source. Why we've heard red wine is so good for us is because of the polyphenols in red wine. I'll put my clients sometimes on a supplement called resveratrol, which is a type of a polyphenol, but the Opti Reds, it's a great source of polyphenols, which they've shown that if your ratio of bacteria is off, so as I mentioned at the beginning, that ratio of Firmicutes to Bacteroidetes, polyphenols, specifically resveratrol, is really great for lowering that ratio if that is on the high side, which can help with weight loss even.
How is weight loss and metabolism affected by the gut?
Yeah, so I had already kind of mentioned a little bit about how bacteria can determine how many calories we absorbed from food that we're eating. So when that ratio is off, it can increase in insulin sensitivity, insulin resistance in the gut if that bacteria ratio is off. And there's a specific strain of bacteria called Akkermansia that has been associated with an increased level of insulin sensitivity. A lot of big words there. But basically, when I run these microbiome tests on a lot of my clients, if they're deficient in Akkermansia, typically we'll see a higher rate of weight gain in some of these people. So the type of bacteria you have in the gut, the ratios can really determine how many calories you're absorbing from the food, how sensitive or resistant you are to insulin, of course, which plays a big role in weight gain. And then another big way it can affect your weight is just by, like, of course, appetite. And when our gut is leaky, this can actually, because our gut and our brain are very interconnected, this can actually cause inflammation and inflammation of the hypothalamus. And when our brain is inflamed and our hypothalamus is inflamed, this can actually affect hormones like leptin and ghrelin that play a huge role in satiety and appetite. So we notice sometimes with people who have leaky gut, they end up having an increase in appetite and therefore having weight gain as well too.
It's incredible how everything is so interconnected. So going into like gut health and mental health a little bit, what kind of progress have you seen from your clients that have gone through the process of fixing their gut, and what kind of like mental benefits have you seen them be able to have from it?
Yeah, so a lot of my clients who come to me and they have brain fog, anxiety, and depression, and we work on healing the gut, they do get massive improvement. I think it also comes from a lot of the other different lifestyle modifications that we're making as well too. But it also goes hand in hand, I think, too, when our mental health is not in the best place and we're not taking care of ourselves, our gut is negatively affected quite a bit. And that's because when we're constantly in this state of fight or flight, when, let's say, we're having some kind of a trauma response, our gut literally shuts down. We've all heard the analogy of running from a tiger. I wish I could come up with a better one, but when we're running from our tiger, we're not thinking about digesting food. We're not thinking about, having to go to the bathroom. So our body is going to do one or two things. It's either going to hold on to all of our food or it's going to completely expel it. And you can imagine, over time, how that can negatively affect our gut. It negatively affects our gut bacteria, can cause inflammation if that's chronically elevated quite a bit. So I see a great amount of improvement, but I've also seen too in a lot of studies that they show with people with lower diversity in the gut, this is also associated with a lot of neurodegenerative disorders. So this can be things like Alzheimer's disease, dementia. So the lower our gut diversity, the higher the correlation with a lot of those memory impairment related disorders, even later on in life. So I truly think like coming up, gut health is going to be the forefront for just like health prevention, whether that's going to be like for diseases like Alzheimer's disease, which is a terrible, terrible disease, or it's going to be for like prevention of viruses, COVID. I think it's just such a cool area to dive into because, like you said, it affects literally every system in the entire body.
Yeah, no kidding. And I agree with you. I think it is going to be, like you said, the forefront of getting control of one's health and wellness overall. So we have a lot of competitors that listen to the show, and you being a competitor that competed for a long time and then had some health issues, some gut issues, what is maybe some advice that you would give to those competitors to maybe help them prevent those issues, or maybe just some advice on the other side of things for those that might be experiencing it? What can you say to them?
Yeah. You're sacrificing your health is never worth any trophy, anything ever. And that's something I wish I could go back and tell, my younger self. But I also know what it's like to be so in something, want something so bad, and to be so passionate about it. And sometimes you don't even really realize like the negative effect that it is having on your health. Right. And I think there is you can compete in a healthy way for sure. But I think it's knowing when, okay, my health is taking a little bit of a hit and I need to pull back now, and not being so focused always on the trophy. And it's always asking yourself, like, who is this for? Is this for you to be a better version of you, to be your most optimal self, to be more confident in yourself? We all want to look good, be more confident. Or is this for a judge? Or is this for a trophy? And, for me, it started off as the first, but I think it eventually developed into the later. And I was like trying to prove something. And that was some of my own traumas that I had to address for sure. So I'd say first and foremost, like, who is this for? Because if it's for you, your health should never, ever, ever suffer because of this. If anything, this should like improve your health. It should be a better version of yourself. So I'd say first and foremost, always, ask yourself that question, because it can change over time. What's oftentimes for most competitors starts off as a very healthy journey can develop into something that's very, very toxic and no longer good for them mentally and physically. I'd say, the second thing is, do be careful, when it comes to the coach that you're working with, do your research. I've seen a lot of competitors, blaming their coaches, hey, they did this to me. And by all means, like, coaches, hey, you're taking someone's health into, your hands, and it's something that like they need to have a lot of experience and credibility in that. But it's also, I think, up to the person seeking a coach to do their research. What are their credentials? What is their experience in that too? And I think sometimes, especially online, we just pick the person who looks the best and we're like, they're going to be who helps me. Well, it's your health. So pick somebody who has the credentials, who really knows what they're doing, first and foremost. And then secondly, I'd say, the diet side of things. If I could go back and change anything, it would have been focusing a little bit more on the food quality side of things instead of just like the macro side of things. So macros matter. We know that. We need to focus on how much protein we're getting, carbs, fats, and especially when you're competing, that's incredibly important to get to the type of physique that you're trying to aim for. But quality does matter. And I was definitely doing, just because I felt so restrictive, a lot of those processed foods, artificial foods. So a ton of sucralose, foods full of gums like xanthan gum, guar gum, just like chemicals, and that wreaks havoc on your gut microbiome. And I think you have to realize you're already putting yourself under stress. So know that going in. Physically, I'm going to be under a lot of stress, and probably mentally, I'm going to be in a lot of stress. So what things can we do to support these different things? What can I do to support myself mentally, prioritize recovery, sleep, maybe it's a meditation practice. How can I support my body the best? Maybe that is food quality, doing the research with the coach you're working with. And I'd say just always, always, always going back to the why.
Wow, you just provided such incredible perspective. I don't think I've heard anyone say it like that, where you mentioned how a lot of us get into it to be the best versions of ourselves, and then at some point it switches to doing it for the trophy or doing it for the judge. So I really just want to reiterate that to everybody listening. That my kind of stance and take on that is, if you're in a competition season and you are continuously being your best, you're looking better, you're feeling better. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's the reason I fell in love with competing, where you are just on top of everything. You feel mentally your strongest, you feel physically great, you feel just on top of the world, right? Notice when that switch starts to happen to where you feel like you're not feeling that way anymore. Maybe even you start to decline a little bit. Maybe you're not sleeping as well. Maybe you're all of a sudden you're noticing a change in appetite. I think this takes a sense of awareness to just be really self-aware and really in tune with your body to know when those changes are happening. And also mentally really start to recognize when you do get hyper focused and you've just done that second national show and you're almost there and you want to go for another national show, but your body is not in its prime. It's not your best. You're mentally not feeling your best. You're feeling strung out. Your relationships are suffering. Like, all these other things are happening and you have to take it into account. So I think as long as you're being the best version of yourself and you're really caring and catering to your health on the inside, not just on what you look like, but your actual health from the inside out, then continue and do it with that heart and with that posture, and just give yourself an agreement, right? Like, make an agreement with yourself that I will always prioritize my health. And as long as I can keep my health at the forefront, I don't have to sacrifice that. And my other, areas of life are doing well as well, then you can continue, but just be really self-aware to when that switch happens. And also, you don't have to be so black and white about it, in the sense of, like, some people think if they stop their season that they have to be like, make a decision now of like, okay, I'm either never competing again or I'm competing next season. Like, it's okay for you to not know. It's okay for you to just say, you know what, I'm not doing my best right now, so I'm actually going to focus on my health and I'm going to give myself what it needs. And then later, when the season changes, you can make that decision for yourself. So don't feel like you have to have all these answers or you have to have another show date. And I think we sometimes can have this outside pressure from other people, because people will ask like, oh, when's the next show? Oh, when are you competing again? Like, I still get that question, and don't allow that those outside questions to put pressure on yourself. You did this for you, so continue doing it for you, and give yourself that love and that respect and just the attention that it needs to function optimally and to function at its best. Because when you're at your best, that's where everyone seeks to be, right? We all seek to be the best version of ourselves. So just be really aware to when maybe that's not happening for you.
Yeah. And I'll add, funny story. I stay in like peak optimal shape all year round, just because that's like who I am. And I enjoy it. And it's no longer about the trophy or anything like that. But I was at the gym literally last week, and this guy's like, you should compete. Why aren't you competing? And he goes, don't let that body go to waste.
Wow.
And I just looked at him and I was like, oh, trust me, it is not. But I know. But it's interesting, other people's perspective. And I'll even add to everything that you said, don't get so focused on the outcome that you lose sight of who you are in the process. Because who you are, like how you show up, it should be making that version of yourself better. You should be excelling in your relationships and your work. And that's why I love fitness so much, is because it makes me a better version of me. But when I got so focused on the end goal, the outcome, I started to neglect all of those things. And I think it's the same with anybody with any goal, right? With weight loss, some people are like, hey, whether you're a competitor or you're not, and they're like, I want to look good in a bikini. I have this, event coming up. I want to lose 20 pounds and that's the end goal. Well, they're focused on the goal, but they're not so focused on who they are in the process, like who they need to be. I had a guy ask me a month ago in the elevator, and he's like, how do you stay so fit? And I was like, how long have you been working out for? And I was like, well, I was a gymnast, and then I was a dancer, and then I went off to college, and then I got into weightlifting, and then I did bodybuilding, and then now I just work out most days per week. And I'm like, I don't know, most of my life, I'm like, this is just who I am. I'm like, I'm an athlete. And it kind of took him a minute because he was trying to ask me like, how long have I been working out for? But I realized like what I was telling him is like, this is who I am, you know, and there's not an end goal here. I'm not just doing this for like the trophy to lose 20 pounds or get to an end goal. It's just like, this is how I show up. It's what allows me to be the best version of myself. So I'd say for anyone, whether it's like a weight loss goal, it's wanting to compete, you know, it's great to have a goal. There is nothing wrong with it. I'm 100% for that, but just don't lose sight of who you are in the process of doing so.
That's beautiful. And I think it's such a good reminder because a lot of people can get just that tunnel vision once they get involved in competing, because it's kind of like that dangling carrot of like, you know, you start competing and then you got to get nationally qualified, and you get qualified and then you got to go to nationals, you go to nationals, you get your pro card, you go to a pro show, then you want to win a pro show, then you want to go to the Olympia, then win the Olympia, and then you want to be a second time winner of Olympia, right? It just keeps going and going. When in reality, some people just got into it in the first place because they wanted to challenge themselves a little bit more, right? And so they went from like challenging themselves a little bit more to just always chasing that next thing. So I think it's just really important, like you said, just to always remember why you started, and remember that the whole goal is to be the best version of yourself. So don't ever allow any goal, any person, I'll even throw in there, or any situation to allow you to step outside of that. You know, always seek to be that best version of yourself and include those ingredients of life that make you that best version of yourself. So I have this random question, but I want to know your thoughts on things like diet sodas, and also like the Walden Farms and all of the like extra things that especially competitors use a lot of. Like, what's your stance on it? Are Diet Cokes the end of the world? Do they really cause cancer? Like, give me your opinion on those things.
Yeah. You probably can guess how I stand on the Walden Farms already. Yeah. I think in any scenario, of course, real food is going to be the best bet. Now, does that mean you can't go out and have a Diet Coke or something like that every now and then? That's not by all means what I'm saying. But I think for anyone who has these as staples like every day in their diet, could it be messing with your gut microbiome? Yes, there's a lot of studies about it. And the way I describe it is, yes, there's no calories in sucralose and a lot of these different diet foods where they use artificial sweeteners and other ingredients like Walden Farms. If you look at the back, that's not food. Like, it is gums, fillers, artificial coloring, sweeteners. Like, there is not one thing in that is food, and there's no calories. And just because we're not using it for energy, it doesn't mean it's not being digested and used by something in our body, specifically our bacteria in our gut. If you read the side effects on sucralose, you will see bloating, distension, constipation. You'll see a bunch of these GI issues, neuro issues, and there is just side effects of doing a bunch of these different artificial sweeteners. So just because there's no calories and your body's not using them and converting them into energy doesn't mean it's still not going to be a source of food for the bacteria in our body. So no, every now and then, you know, having some of that, not a big deal. Like, I don't really eat sugar, but this weekend at the First Forum Fall Fest, I had a s'more. Oh my gosh, it was amazing.
I had one too. It was so good.
But I don't do that all the time. Like, literally the last s'more I had was probably like 2 years ago at the last Fall Fest.
Yeah.
And yeah, every now and then, do I like to go out and maybe have a drink? Yes. Every now and then, do I like to go out and I have something that's not so good for my gut? Of course. And this isn't about being 100% all the time, but I'd say for the people who have these as staples, as daily things in their diet, that's more so what we want to be a little bit more cautious with. I know when I was competing, I'd have my coffee, I'd put my sweetener in there, and then I would have all of my breakfast food, and then midday I'd have my protein shake full of sucralose, and then my pre-workout full of sucralose. And it just like, it was constantly in my diet. And then I'd have some Halo Top ice cream, which again, full of those sweeteners and gums. And now I look back and I'm like, well, no wonder my gut was so off, and combined with everything else. Again, every now and then, not a big deal. You know, we can have those as part of our diet. It's not going to ruin your gut. But if we're doing it consistently on a daily basis, and especially if you're somebody who is suffering with gut issues, it may be something you want to pay close attention to.
Yeah, that's such a great point. They say even too much water can kill you, right? So it's like anything in excess can end up not being a good thing. So moderation is definitely key. Okay, I want to put you on the spot here and kind of, I don't know if this is a hard question for you or not, but let's say that we have someone listening, they know that they're experiencing gut health issues. Could you give them like 5 steps that you would take just in their daily life that they could just take action on right now, just to start seeing a little bit of progress without any testing or without knowing anything, which I know is difficult making a general recommendation, but what are just maybe 5 things that they could start doing?
5 things they could start doing. First, eliminating snacking, from their diet. We had talked a little bit earlier about why we want to do that, but just to optimize digestion, optimize their body's migrating motor complex, their blood sugar. So that would be first. And I'll even pair that with making sure with each meal you're getting high quality animal protein, some amount of healthy fats. So these could be mono or polyunsaturated fats. So I'm a big avocado girl. Olive oils are great. Olives, fatty cuts of fish. So it's getting some kind of fats. And then more complex type carbohydrates or fibers. So these could be non-starchy vegetables. It's a great source of fiber. They could be some fruits like berries, but this could also be, things like sweet potatoes or starches like that. So those 3 things combined in one meal should leave you feeling pretty full and satiated because of the protein, the fats, the complex carbohydrates. So you don't really need to snack during the day as well. But all of those foods, they're real food that support your gut microbiome. What's the best thing you can do for supporting your gut is going to be getting in those 3 things: high quality protein, healthy fats, lots of fruits and veggies that are full of fibers. So minimizing snacking, focusing on those 3 things, protein, fats, and fiber, PFF, with every single meal. I'd say the next thing that they could try to do is adding in maybe some kind of a digestive enzyme. So sometimes for people, I'll use HCl, that's hydrochloric acid, and pepsin. That's really good to just support protein digestion. Very common source of bacterial overgrowth is people having low stomach acid. Is an easy supplement you can get on. Pair that with some pancreatic enzymes to see if you can optimize your digestion that way. First form, make some good digestive enzymes that we had already mentioned. I use a company called Metagenics where I get some of the HCl. So you can just take one of those caps with every time you eat. So adding in some of the enzymes, I'd say also with diet, focusing on polyphenols. So I'd mentioned a few earlier. So that's going to be like berries, dark chocolate. I wouldn't say get all of your polyphenols from wine because alcohol is not so good for the gut. But you can also utilize things like resveratrol, which is another type of a supplement, which is great for supporting your gut. Green tea is another type of a polyphenol. Those are going to be incredible to support your gut microbiome as well. So adding in as many polyphenols as possible. You can literally just Google high polyphenol foods, and a lot of those will come up. And that can be something great that you do. Then the fifth one I haven't mentioned. And you can actually utilize 2 teaspoons of ghee every single day. So ghee is a clarified grass-fed butter, but 300 milligrams of butyrate, which is a type of a short-chain fatty acid, is found in ghee. And butyrate is really great because it helps strengthen that gut lining. So you can get it naturally from food sources. I had already kind of talked about how you can use glutamine and aloe vera and licorice root to help replenish the gut, but I'm always for using food, and butyrate specifically is incredible for supporting that gut lining, for supporting the bacteria in your gut, and you can literally get it by just 2 teaspoons of ghee every single day.
Wow, that's incredible. So there you guys have it, a 5-step process if you guys want to get started now. Yeah. If people are interested in working with you, where can they go and how does that process work?
Yeah, you can check out my website, which is rachelscheer.com, SCHEER. Everyone always forgets the C. And we have an application process to see if you want to work with me or anyone on my team. We have a team of registered dietitians, nurse practitioner. And we have on the website all the different testing that we do. I do all the testing on everybody between the gut, the hormones, adrenal toxins, food sensitivities, deficiencies. So we're going to get a really good picture of everything. And then what we do is addressing the things in the order that they occur. I'm very hands-on with the coaching, the nutrition, and the different protocols that we do in order to get you back to feeling your most optimal self. So you can check out my website. You can also follow me on social media at Rachel Scheer.
And you can also subscribe to her podcast, Scheer Madness. Yes. Well,
Scheer
Rachel,
Madness.
Thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us today. I feel like I learned so much. I was just sitting here with my eyes wide the whole time, like, tell me more. Because I
can keep going.
Yeah, I know, I can tell. But yeah, I really appreciate you being here and sharing this with the listeners. I've had quite a few questions come up about gut health, and I was like, well, I may not be able to answer your questions in detail, but I know that my friend Rachel can. So for more information, please check her out. Like she mentioned, her Instagram as well as her podcast. She has so much information just on her on her Instagram alone. I was reading through that, and just even that, I feel like you could educate yourself so much on gut health and what it really requires to make some progress in that area. So thank you so much, Rachel, for being on today's show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. All right, you guys, you know the drill. If you enjoyed today's episode, do us a favor, tag both myself and Rachel on your Instagram stories. You can rate and review the podcast if you haven't done that already. I'd really appreciate that. And like, share, subscribe, do all the things to support the show, because the only way it grows is with your support. I appreciate you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye, guys.